I'm going to say something that might upset some of my fellow spiritual people. And I say this with so much love because I have done exactly what I'm about to describe. Spiritual bypassing, using your spiritual practice to avoid dealing with your actual life, might be the most socially accepted form of avoidance that exists in the wellness world today. And the wild part, we don't just tolerate it, we celebrate it, we post it, we caption it healing journey. High vibes only isn't always a boundary. Sometimes it's a hiding place with really good lighting. This is Spiritual Tea. I am Teja Priyadarshini, and today we're going to go into the wound, like literally, instead of going around it. Welcome back. I'm really glad you're here today for this one. Because it's a tender topic and I want to handle it with care, even while I'm being direct. If you've ever felt like a flicker of guilt reading that cold open, like, oh no, that is me, good. That flicker is useful information. Don't run from it. It's exactly what we're building on today, that muscle, that learns to recognize all of this. So let's get into this with a story. I want to tell you a story about a woman I'll call Maya. Maya had been to Bali 4 times, not for vacation, for transformation, yoga retreats, aesthetic dance, a guru she flew across the world to sit with. She had already done 3 Vipassana retreats, 10 days of silence for each one. If you know anything about Vipassana, you know that it's not a spa weekend. It's very, very real and very hard, and it's a committed practice. In her apartment, Maya had sage hanging from the door frame. She had crystals for every occasion, rose quartz for her desk, black tourmaline by the front door, selenite by the windowsills, catching the light just right for the photograph. By every outward measure, Maya was one of the most spiritually devoted people you could meet. And I want to be clear, none of that devotion was fake. She wasn't performing. She genuinely loved this path. And here's what she told me, sitting across from me, finally being honest for maybe the first time in years. She came home from every single one of those retreats to the exact same life. Same relationships, the one that drained her, the one she'd cried about in 3 different countries during 3 different healing journeys, and then flown home to the same space anyway. She had the same financial struggle, no closer to being resolved. Same hollow feeling in her chest at around 4 p.m. most days, and the one no amount of cacao ceremony ever actually touched. She said something to me that I've never forgotten. She said, I think I have spent $12,000 in 4 different continents trying to feel one specific thing. That was the moment. That was the crack. Because up until then, every retreat, every ceremony, every beautiful sunset meditation had quietly functioned as a real elegant exit ramp, a few days away from the relationship, away from the bank account, away from the version of herself that felt hollow. And each time it worked for exactly as long as she was there. And then she'd land, walk back into her apartment, and the wound would be sitting right there on the couch, waiting, completely untouched by any of it. The moment everything shifted for Maya wasn't the 5th retreat. It was the moment she stopped booking the next flight and instead asked herself out aloud in her own kitchen, what am I actually running from? That question was harder than any silent 10-day retreat she'd ever sat through. Because a retreat has a schedule, a container, an end date. That question didn't. Here's the truth I need to say clearly, because the wellness industry rarely says it out loud. The universe does not give you a pass for going to a retreat. I'll say that again, because I think a lot of us are quietly hoping it isn't true. The universe does not give you a pass for going to a retreat. The wound is still there when you land. It doesn't dissolve because you cried during your breathwork session, or felt a wave of bliss during a ceremony, or had a profound realization at 2 a.m. under string lights with people you'll never see again. Those experiences can be real. They can even be meaningful. But real spiritual development does not go around the wound. It goes into it. There's a word I use a lot in this work: tapas. It's a Sanskrit word often translated as discipline or the fire of transformation. And I want to be really precise about what tapas actually means, because the wellness world has quietly rebranded it into something much more comfortable. Tapas is not incense. Tapas is not a cacao ceremony with a beautiful playlist. Tapas is not the aesthetics of healing. Tapas is facing the fire. It is the discipline of staying in the room with the thing you most want to leave. It's sitting with your own hollow feeling at 4 p.m. instead of booking the next flight away from it. It's having the hard conversation with the partner instead of doing another round of solo journaling about what I'm learning from this relationship. It's looking directly at the bank account instead of trusting that abundance will simply arrive if your vibration is high enough. Spiritual bypassing is when we take real spiritual tools, meditation, energy work, retreats, ceremony, and quietly repurpose them as avoidance instead of confrontation. And because they are dressed in sacred language, we don't even recognize it as avoidance. We call it protecting my peace. We call it raising my vibration. Sometimes that's true. And sometimes, if we are honest, it's just a very beautiful form of running. So, how do you tell the difference? How do you actually know if you're doing real spiritual work or elegant avoidance? Because I know some of you are sitting there right now, a little nervous, wondering if your own practice qualifies. Here's the litmus test I use both with my clients and with myself, because believe me, I have caught myself doing this too. Simply ask yourself when you are sitting by yourself, does this practice make me more able to face the hard things in my life, or does it make the hard thing quieter, further away, easier to ignore for another week? Real spiritual practice increases your capacity to be with discomfort. It doesn't eliminate the discomfort. It builds your tolerance for staying present with it so you can actually do something about it. Meditation, done honestly, should eventually make you more willing to have the difficult conversation, not less, not avoiding the conversation completely. Energy work done honestly should surface the wound clearly enough that you can finally address it directly, not simply make you feel lighter for 48 hours before you land back exactly where you started. Avoidance dressed as spirituality does the opposite. It gives you relief without resolution. It's a pressure release valve, genuinely helpful in the moment, genuinely necessary sometimes. But if it's the only thing you're doing, you're not healing. You're just managing. You're taking just enough of the edge off to go another few months without confronting the actual source. Another marker is notice what happens in the quiet, ordinary moments. Not the retreat, not the ceremony, but just like in any Tuesday afternoon, in your kitchen, at the table, if the same feeling shows up, untouched, no matter how many ceremonies you've done, that's the signal. That's the wound telling you it hasn't actually been met yet. It's been visited, but not healed. So what does it look like to go into the wound and not around it. I don't want to leave you with just the diagnosis. I want to give you a direction. Going into the wound instead of around it usually looks much less glamorous than the spiritual content we're used to seeing. It looks like naming the actual thing out loud to a person or a therapist or a healer in plain language, not spiritual language, not bypass language, not "I'm learning so much about patterns right now." Just "I'm scared of being alone, and that is why I keep choosing people who can't fully show up." It looks like doing the deep guided inner work, real energetic subconscious healing with specific intention of meeting the wound directly rather than using the modality as a beautiful distraction from it. It looks like staying in your own kitchen instead of booking the 5th trip to Bali. Not because Bali is bad. Bali is wonderful. I love Bali. But because if the pattern hasn't been met, the 5th trip will end exactly like the first 4. Tapas is uncomfortable because it is supposed to be. That discomfort is not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign you're finally doing at all. So here's what I want you to take away into this week. Think of the spiritual practice or ritual you return to the most often when things get hard, and ask yourself honestly, is this bringing me closer to the thing I'm avoiding or pushing me further away from it? There's no wrong answer here, and there is no shame in what you find. Even Maya, 4 retreats and 3 continents later, wasn't doing anything wrong. She was doing exactly what made sense to her at that particular time. She just eventually had to admit the destination wasn't going to be an eternal one. If this episode landed for you, I'd love for you to share it with someone in your life who is deeply spiritual and deeply quietly stuck. Someone who needs permission to know that going inward is allowed to be the actual next retreat. Next week, we're going to be talking about affirmations and why telling a wounded nervous system to choose abundance without doing this work first might actually be doing more harm than good. Until then, go gently and go in, not around. See you next week.